like in the case of depression, where it can be related to certain traumatic events. I think one or two of you did that pretty well, but I think most of them, most of the rest of you, would just ask about whether you forgot the term. So very much that, and then you left it completely in there. So most of you did very well in terms of asking about the symptoms of depression, but that is only at the most half of this question. So you did really talk about and ask about, explore very much what, whether this actually has got to be insured. And of course, in real life, they have both the insurance and depression. So I thought that part wasn't done very well for most of you, except maybe one or two. And one of them, I actually had to decide to fail because he finished quite quickly. I think you have, when you have a lot of time and start wondering what you do, and you start talking about things that you know that you probably haven't covered enough. Yeah, I know it's over 7 minutes, but if you just like, you seem to have finished everything by the 5th minute, there's nothing much to say. So I thought that in that circumstances, really was too silly and didn't really cover everything in a reasonable quantity and effect. So I think the memory part needs to, I think I see it as a general weakness. I think that has to be reinforced in a very general way, so that when you ask again of this question in exam, whether it's long question or whether it's OSCE, you'll be able to read very well. The answers are all there in the textbooks.
Okay, thank you. That session was Raj, right? Yeah.
I only have one thing to say. The empathy, there are two parts actually. One is verbal empathy. All of you did very well, but the non-verbal part, some of you didn't do really well at all. Just said, oh, it must have been very difficult, but very robotically. So I thought, the verbal part, the way you sound, the tone, and all that's very important. Because even though you said it, I myself, I didn't feel comfortable with some of the things. Just one thing.
Thanks. So the fourth station is actually the assessing suitability for CBT and explaining CBT. So the examiner was what have to do.
Can I just check with all the guys that took the station? What was the task that you all recall having to do? Can I just ask what the task that you all think you all recall from the station?
Assess the suitability.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, so this is actually a double-barrel task station. So for the benefit of the other examiners, I'll just briefly summarize. They were supposed to assess suitability for CBT and to explain what CBT entails in a 23-year-old law student who's been diagnosed with a 2-month history of depression. So he's compliant with his medications. So essentially what I found quite lacking was an attention to the task itself. I think out of the 8, there were at most 2 who actually held in mind the task of assessment for suitability. A couple went in immediately trying to explain what CBT was. So that was my critique for the content part of the station. But I would like to focus a little bit more about the practical aspect of doing the station. I thought that the introductions were good in that they introduced you, but some of them went on for 5, 6, even 7 sentences, and it didn't take into account what the patient might want to say or meeting a doctor for the first time. So I feel that if you're going to do that, come in, be warm, be reassuring, introduce yourself, don't go on for too long, say why you are there, and ask them what they think you're there for, and try to get them to speak a bit more, because then the patient will need very valuable information. Because if you go into a very long soliloquy about introducing yourself, you lose that initial connection with the patient. That's one thing. The next thing is actually getting into the role of a psychiatrist. The examiner wants to see a psychiatrist. He doesn't want to see a candidate taking an examination. So for the benefit of you all, please try and use the clipboards and anything else that you attach to the clipboards. The reason why I say this is, I sort of observed, after the 2nd or 3rd minute, nobody actually looked at the clipboards. The clipboard is a prop. It is an anxiety-reducing prop, if I can call it that, for the first couple of minutes, and even when you all look, just glance, you're not really taking any information from the keyboard, and it serves to interfere with the record and interfere with the patient. So for those of you who had the clipboard, you put it aside and you talk to the patient, that came out a lot more naturally than those who holding the keypad, almost as if it's a barrier between you and the patient. And the watch cannot run. Because if you have a watch in front of a patient, the patient immediately knows that they're not in focus. The watch is going to be in focus. And don't look at the examiner. The patient is who you need to engage with throughout the whole interview, from start till the end. The examiner is just there to observe. Okay, so other than a hello, good afternoon, and goodbye, nothing else to the examiner. The second thing is communication. Break it into chunks and always check whether they understand. Check if they've understood what you've said, what their expectations are, and then after that, go into what you're going to say to them. For too long, there was sort of very preachy, sort of this is what CBT is, and then for the next 1-2 minutes, you're just going on. I would like to echo what Prof said about not just checklisting, try to read what the patient is saying into your line of questioning as well. And the last thing is CBT is not just for psychologists. The reason why there's a CBT station is because it is one of the core competencies in residency. So the idea is that when you are a psychiatrist, you should be able to do CBT. So when the patient asks you if you are the one that's going to do it, I think the one or two of you that said, yes, I am the one, it felt very, very reassuring. For those of you that said, I will hand you off to somebody else, I think immediately that ends the station then and there. It's very hard to talk about. Melvin was my actor, and I think he had quite a lot of insightful feedback.
I guess for most of them, quite a couple of them came in, read the staff and came in, thinking that there was a session to explain to me what CBT is, and they actually went ahead and gave me a couple of days lecture on what CBT is, and a lot of them feel to elicit the negative condition that I have, and they try to explain the lex triad to me in a very not so elemental, so it's quite hard for me to comprehend. I'm trying to guide them, to use more about my negative thoughts and try to explain to me how that negative thoughts leads to the emotions that I'm feeling. And I think a lot of them, I agree with what Dr. said, they try to shift the responsibility over to the psychologist to administer, and they think that the psychologist is the best person to administer the CBT itself. And a couple of them is maybe because alternatively, any other inputs will discuss whether I'm suitable for other form of other modalities or therapies that psychodynamic or IPT, and they insisted that CBT is definitely suitable, but that's because they assume that they will go to tell me about CBT, and so no other form of therapy will be explored during the session itself.
So thanks for that. We'll be moving on to the fifth station, which is the ADHD station by Dr. Lim.
So at first I thought this session was pretty long because that ADHD criteria is pretty extensive, right? But surprisingly, I think you did pretty well. You can actually get more information. So I think it's actually quite a broader station. I think when you all came in introduction, establishing rapport with the angry mom, probably the mom was the angry enough. Somehow we were pretty good, I must say. Okay, in terms of the eliciting of symptoms, so I think a few of you actually demonstrated that asking open-ended questions was a good way to go around eliciting ADHD symptoms. Because the moment you kind of went into open-ended questions, I think mom threw a lot of symptoms at you. It clearly was more efficient than the checklist method which some others have used, which clearly wasn't as efficient. So using an open-ended question, and after that, probably close-ended to elicit the rest of the symptoms is good. And then probably using a summary as a way when mom gives you a description, and you summarize up that symptom in 1 or 2 criteria. That was a useful strategy. So some kind of struggled to try and demonstrate that the symptoms were onset before 7, and struggled because mom said that, I didn't know what happened before 7 because it was there and brought me to school. You kind of struggle a little around there, but I mean, you could actually shift to the home-based situation. It doesn't have to be entirely school-based symptoms, you see.